A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. Part 2. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Fifth part of Chapter 1. That it is Satan's grand design to corrupt the minds of men with error, the evidences that it is so, and the reasons of his endeavours that way. Papists are hardened by this. And though they have no reason to boast of their unity among themselves, as they have been often told, and now of late by Dr. Stillingfleet, who hath manifested, that their divisions among themselves are as great, and managed with as great animosity, as any amongst us. Yet are their ears so beaten with the objection of sects and schisms elsewhere, that they are generally confirmed to stay where they are. Besides, this is a stumbling block which the devil throws in the way of poor ignorant people. If they are urged to a serious strictness in religion, they are affrighted from it by the consideration of sects and parties, and the woeful miscarriages of some erroneous persons, that at first pretended to strictness, imagining that strictness in religion is an unnecessary, dangerous thing, and that the sober, godly Christians are but a company of giddy, unsettled, conceited, precise persons, who will in a little time run themselves into madness and distraction, or into despair. And thus out of fear of schism or error, they dare not be religious in good earnest, but content themselves with drawing near to God with their mouths, and confessing Him with their lips, whilst their hearts are far from Him, and in their works they deny Him. Titus 1:16. There is such a propensity in the hearts of men to be staggered by the multitude and boldness of errors, that the Apostle Paul expresseth the sense of it, and seems tenderly careful to avoid that blow, which he knew Satan would readily give through that consideration, by the apology that he makes for God in His holy, wise, providential permission of them. 1 Corinthians x. 19. There must be heresies among you. His intent is not barely to put them off with this, that heresies are unavoidable, but to satisfy them that there is a necessity of them, and that they are useful, as God's furnace and fan, to purify and to cleanse, that they which are approved may be made manifest. The like care he hath in 2 Timothy 2:19, 20, upon the mention of the error of Hymenaeus and Philetus, where he obviateth the offence that might arise by reason of their apostasy, partly by removing the fears of the upright, in affirming their safety whatever became of other men, seeing the foundation of God standeth sure, and partly by declaring it no more suitable or dishonorable, for God to permit the rise of errors in His church, than for great men to have in their houses, not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and of earth, some to honor, and some to dishonor. By these very apologies, it appears that Satan by this device of error, designs to shake men's faith, and to drive them from their religion. 7. Seventhly, neither can this, that corrupt doctrines bring forth corrupt practices, be of any less weight with Satan, or less engaging for the pursuit of this design, than any of the forementioned reasons. Corrupt doctrines are embraced as the very truth of God by the deluded, and one way or other, directly or consequentially, they lead on practice, and that with the highest security and confidence, as if they were very truths indeed. The devil then hath this great advantage by error, that if he can but corrupt the minds of men, especially in the more weighty and fundamental points of religion, then by a great ease and without any more labor he hath gained them, to the practice of whatsoever, these corrupted principles will lead unto. No course can be taken that with greater expedition and prevalency, can introduce profane debaucheries than this. Thus he conquers parties and multitudes, as a victorious general takes cities and whole countries, by surrender, whereas his particular temptations to sin are but inconsiderable, less successful pickwearings in comparison. And when he hath once corrupted the understandings of men, he hath by that means a command over their consciences, and doth not now urge to evil, in the notion of a devil or tempter, but as an angel of light, or rather as a usurper of divine authority. He commands these wicked practices as necessary duties, or at least gives a liberty therein, as being harmless allowances. This difference was of old observed in Satan's management of persecution and error, that in the former he did compel men to deny Christ, but by the latter he did teach them. In persecution cogit homines neger Christum, nunc dacet. That the lives and practices of men are so concerned by corrupt doctrines, may appear to any that are but indifferently acquainted with Scripture or history. We are told by the Apostle Paul that faith and conscience stand so related to each other, that they live and die together, and that when the one is shipwrecked the other is drowned for company. 1 Timothy 1:19. In Philippians 3:2, he seems severely harsh against those of the circumcision. He calls them dogs, beware of evil workers. The reason of which expression I apprehend, lies not so much in these resemblances, that dogs spoil the flock by devouring, or that they are fawning creatures, or that they are industrious in prosecution of their prey. Though in all these particulars, false teachers may be compared to dogs, for they spare not the flock, they compass sea and land to gain disciples, and they entice them with fair speeches, but rather he intends the similitude to express the profane life and carriage of these seducers, for dogs are filthy creatures, to a proverb, the dog to his vomit. And common prostitutes, for their uncleanness, were called dogs in the Old Testament. So some expound Deuteronomy 23:18, the hire of a whore, or the price of a dog. And we have full and clear descriptions of seducers from their wicked and abominable practices, 2 Peter 2:10, they that walk after the flesh, in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government, presumptuous are they, self-willed, they are not afraid to speak evil of dignities, verse 14, having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin. An heart exercised with covetous practices. Cursed children, verse 18. They allure through the lusts of the flesh, through much wantonness. Jude 4, there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of God into lasciviousness, verse 16, these are murderers, complainers, walking after their own lusts. 2 Timothy 3. 2-5, men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, of this sort are they which creep into houses. All which do set forth heretical persons, as the most scandalous wicked wretches, that we shall meet with, grossly filthy in themselves, corrupted in all the duties of their relations, natural and civil, defiled in all the ways of their converse with men. Neither are these wicked practices issuing from gross errors, to be looked upon as rare, accidental, or extraordinary effects thereof, but as the natural and common fruits of them. For Christ makes this to be the very special property and note whereby false prophets may be discovered, Matthew 7:16, ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes off thorns, or figs off thistles? These fruits were not their doctrines, but their lives. For to know false prophets by false doctrines is no more than to know false doctrine by false doctrine. Thanks.